Does this look a bit David Brent? Hello everybody and welcome to a place called Surprise View. At least that's where I parked, a place called Surprise View. I can't see any surprises or views, which I imagine just means I'm lost again. It's 2 days later, still no surprise. Also, I still don't have snow tyres, so I've come out with Nigel today, who does have snow tyres. And his channel's gone gangbusters in the last few months, so go and check out his channel if you haven't seen it yet. I'll put a link in the description. But anyway, this most important button thing that I was going to talk about. So basically, it's the on-off button. Joking, it's not the on-off button. It's this button, this one that says AF, AE, lock. And the reason it's the most important button is that I have it configured to focus on focusing. In other words, that's what they call back button focusing. And there are a number of reasons that works quite well. So traditionally, by default, as many of you will know, basically focusing and taking pictures is all controlled by one button. So you half press the shutter button to focus, and then you fully press it to take a photo, which a lot of the time works quite well because typically when you take photos, you also want to focus. Hence why they're put together. However, there are times, today for example, when you want those two things separated. So I'm wearing gloves at the moment and trying to judge where the half press is quite difficult. Typically what it means is that I end up focusing on things that I don't want to focus on, or I end up taking photos that I didn't want to take. That's what typically happens when I'm wearing gloves. And it's not just gloves in cold weather, it's wind, it's noise, it's anything that's distracting, and you end up either not focusing or focusing on random things. So having a button on the back that's dedicated to focusing that you can press as hard as you want when you want to focus, and you don't have to worry about things like pressure on the shutter button, that's a godsend. There is another reason that back button focusing works quite well, and that is that you can stay in continuous autofocus for pretty much the whole time versus having to switch between single autofocus and continuous autofocus. Let me explain. For example, here's a nice tree that I might like to take a photo of, and let's say that I want to focus on it and then recompose. You can't see my camera screen at all there, can you? I forgot that the snow would make the camera screen really dark. I'll do the explaining here. Alright, take two at the second reason that back button autofocus is so usable. So I've got my G9 set up here and I'm pointing it at two lens boxes of new lenses that I've got that I'm sure I'll talk about at some point. And typically when I'm focusing, I like to use this joystick on the back of the G9 because well, it's just a joy to use. But sometimes that isn't the fastest way to focus. Sometimes the fastest way to focus, if I've got lots of things going on in the frame, is to focus and then recompose. Now the problem with that technique is that I can't do that in a continuous autofocus mode, because if I focus, half pressing the shutter, and then I recompose, the camera will just keep trying to focus on whatever I move the focus point to. And because you have to half press the shutter in order to fully press it to take the photo, there's no way of getting around that. You'll always end up focusing on other stuff after you've recomposed. So for that reason, obviously you have to use a single autofocus mode, so you can focus, move on, and the camera won't refocus. The problem with that is that you might be shooting somewhere where all of a sudden a whale pops out of the sea, like in Greenland, or maybe pebbles pops out of the snow and runs towards you, and you wish that you'd been in a continuous autofocus mode. Not a massive deal on the G9 because there's a switch or a dial right next to the focus button, or the button that I'm suggesting using for focus. But if you're a sports photographer or a concert photographer, then which mode you're in is just another thing to think about, a thing that you don't need to think about because there is another way to always stay in continuous autofocus. So if you use back button autofocus, you can focus on the first thing you want to focus on, take your thumb off the focus button, then recompose, and then take your shot. And the camera won't try to refocus because it'll only try and focus when you've got your thumb on the back button. And what that means in practice is that you can just focus whenever you want to focus, and you can take shots independently of that. It's a really, really simple tip, but it completely changed the way that I take photos. And that concludes the most disjointed back button focus video you'll probably ever see. You're welcome. Also, let's be honest, it's probably the third most important button after the on button and the shutter. But who's going to watch a video about the third most important button? No one. Except for me, I might, but yeah. Thanks for watching. She's got more energy than the sun.
I know, she just doesn't stop. I mean, I've been out for like a whole day and she just literally doesn't stop sometimes.
You feed her rocket fuel?
Yeah, something like that. She's crazy. Although I think the snow's weighing her down a bit.
Looks it.
She's tiring. She's like, oh.